What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a 15-minute Friday where myself and a returning guest sit down one more time, but this time with the goal of sending you into your weekend or your upcoming week with some positive, actionable, or thought-provoking advice and opinion, all based around a specific topic or subject. Back on the show, joining me once again for this one, Gabby Garcia. Welcome back.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here, specifically to talk about this subject for this episode. And I'm going to go ahead and start the timer as we open up the floodgates about this one. So I appreciate you being down to come back on and share about this one, because it's a little bit of a different theme than the other ones that you've been on.
And I was a little hesitant, I'm not going to lie.
Really? Is it now, I know we were talking about this subject a little bit before we recorded, but like, is it because it's kind of that thing where, I mean, full disclaimer, folks, like this is a thing that neither of us
100%
could sit and be like, oh yeah, I totally know the answers to this.
Yes.
Like I totally know the step-by-step process of how someone could stop comparing themselves. Because, yeah, straight up, this is something, I think we even talked about this in your full-length episode.
I think we might have.
And I can't remember if it was like when we weren't recording or I feel like it was in the episode. And this is something that I feel like either of us could talk about with literally anyone that exists, to be honest. Yes, that's the idea of comparison and how to handle comparison in general. And I know there's about 100 different ways we can go with this. And again, I know that neither of us have the answer for this, but I liked the idea of us talking about this one because I think it's important conversations to be had.
Yeah, I agree.
To like remind everybody else while they're comparing themselves, so is everybody else. Everybody's comparing themselves to one another, each like people they don't even know. And even to kind of kick this one off, I want to share like a cliche quote that I often try to remind myself of when it comes to this. And I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure a lot of people listening or watching have seen this around the internet. It's so cliche because it's true, but it's the idea that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yep.
And again, you hear that and you're like, duh. Yeah, I'm not enjoying myself when I'm comparing. But I think like the deeper rooted thing there is that like comparison, I don't think just pops up when there's even something to compare to, if that makes sense. I think there's kind of a constant comparison that's almost running in our minds at all points in time.
I don't disagree. Because
like I'll catch myself comparing just completely opposite things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll look at something that somebody else is doing, and just because they're successful or happy or fulfilled in what they're doing, to be fair, I'm not usually that negative about it. I'm like, hey, I'm stoked for them. But then that voice in your head is also going to be like, but yeah, what about you though?
Yeah.
Like, cool, we're excited for them, but then you're immediately going to compare yourself. And that's kind of the weird thing is like, comparison is negative to us. It's not always outwardly negative to everybody else. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah.
Like, because like if we were to compare and I was like, oh, well, I can't believe you're a health coach. I like helping people too. It's like realistically what that's going to be led with is I love everything that you do and that's so sick and I want you to be successful at it and I want to help out however I can. Like, oh my gosh, everybody go check out Gabby. But then for some reason there's something in my mind. It's like, well, yeah, but so what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like that's where like that weird trade-off happens is like comparison isn't always this outwardly negative thing to anybody else. It's more so like that voice in your head that is constantly being like, okay, cool. Like you're really happy for them, but are we happy for us?
Yeah.
Like, are we accomplishing the things that you're stoked about them, like having done or whatever? So I feel like I'm rambling in this one about comparison, but like, I'm going to toss it to you. What do you feel like is why were you even interested in this topic in the first place? Of like, hey, you know what? Let's talk about it. But I'm timid about it, but let's talk about it.
Because it's so hard. It's so hard not to compare yourself to others. It's something I work on literally every day. And I was literally telling my husband about it recently that had nothing to do with what we were talking about, but it was like things that are easier said than done. And I was like, yeah, like comparing yourself to others. He was like, what? It's like, okay, no, just me. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're like, oh, so you don't feel that? Okay.
But it is really something that I struggle with, and I think I would go as far to say is almost all of us struggle with, especially, I mean, social media is the obvious driver in this
Yeah.
scenario. But even I think before that, it was probably maybe we were just like comparing ourselves to like celebrities or people we saw like on TV. So now that we're seeing more so like our peers and other people that aren't necessarily like actors and actresses or like what we used to think about like famous people, but other like entrepreneurs or business owners and whatever, what have you, whatever you're looking to do for yourself and then comparing to those people is at times I think great because it shows you that it's possible like to do, like they're living what you see of them, they're living out like your dreams. So it tells you like if I keep like working harder, if I keep taking these next steps, like maybe I can get to that or I can get to my version of that. But then at the same time it's like, well, why am I not there yet?
Yeah. It's the why am I not there yet is a huge thing. And again, it's like for sure nowadays social media is absolutely the driving force in all of this. And one of the biggest things with that is like it's so easy to forget that like you are seeing, and I don't mean literal phone filters, but like you are seeing filtered versions of everyone's victories.
Yes.
I'm talking like even if that victory is just like, oh, they had a cool night out for dinner and I was at home with a TV dinner.
Totally.
Or something, you know what I mean? Like even those sort of victories. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, their company hit $1 million and I'm not. You know, it's not even that. But like one of the most important things that I've consistently tried to remind myself of as I'm consistently battling with comparing myself is that we are seeing the end result of decisions that they made that led them to whatever it is that they're doing that we are comparing to. So when we are making that comparison to their end result in the middle of our story, in the middle of our journey, that is unfair from the start.
Oh, yeah.
Like we are not even like basing our comparisons off of equal ground.
Yeah.
Because you're aware while we're looking at somebody on social media, like you are aware of all the flaws that you have, all the things that are wrong in your day-to-day life or career or whatever it is, and all the things you're trying to do to solve those things and make them better and how you're not there yet. You don't see that process when someone else shares something on social.
Totally.
Like you're not seeing the entire story. You're only seeing a portion of the final product or a portion of that painting. You're not getting to see the entire picture. And so it's like, of course you're going to beat yourself up way more because you know your flaws and you're not aware of any of their flaws. To them or to you when they've posted something or whatever it is, just social media is obviously the easy comparison or just the easy example. It's like you're seeing the result. You don't always see the work that goes in.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I feel like most of the time you don't see the work at all.
No. And that's the thing. Like I did another episode with someone about the idea of like luck and the idea of making your own luck. And in a weird way, I feel like these things coincide very well because like it's easy to, when you're playing the comparison game, to look at somebody, see what they have or see what they're doing and say, they're so lucky and I'm so unlucky.
Yeah.
This just sucks. What did they do? And it's like, you're forgetting that, sure, could luck play a factor in some people's results of stuff? Sure. But realistically, what led them to that final result was a series of decisions that they made.
Yep.
So it's like there was still kind of work put in, whether consciously or subconsciously on their part, but we don't see that.
Yeah.
We don't see that part of it. We don't see the fact that they had 100 terrible days before the one really good day that we are now comparing to.
Yes.
Well, we're in the middle of our 100 bad days.
Yeah. And I think a lot, especially in like the health and wellness world, because since I'm in that world, I follow a lot of, I guess, health and wellness influencers, health coaches, practitioners, what have you. And I think it's really easy from even my perspective as I'm working to build my business, when I see like all of their wins, and I feel like I've gotten better at being like, they're just a human. Like, we're all just humans. Like, I know Instagram is not real life. Like, I know that to be true, and yet I still find myself comparing. But then I also think of like the day-to-day things, because I guess like most people that I follow on Instagram, I'm not seeing like every second of their life, of course. And I think of like when I do something that I know is not necessarily like the best for me, whether it's a food choice or a habit or whatever. And then I'm like, oh, that person would never do that. Like, I don't know that. Like, I
right.
bet they still fuck up sometimes. They're just not sharing it on social media. And neither
Right.
am I.
Yeah, neither are you. And that's the weird thing is like we beat ourselves up over stuff like that when nobody else knows it but us.
Yeah.
But there's also like 1,000 voices in our head that are like, I can't believe you did that. We all know, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, how could you have done that when, yeah, like you're 100% right. You have no idea if that like perfect, pristine health coach on Instagram that posted 6 awesome tips for being healthier today might have just ate an entire pizza for lunch. You know what I mean?
The possibility exists.
It does. It really does. But it's like if you eat the entire pizza for lunch, you're like, I'm the only person in the world who did this. I can't believe it.
Yeah,
They
like,
would
I'm a phony. Like, I'm not for real. Like, maybe
Yeah.
I'm not caught up, like, out for this. Whatever.
So okay, we're already hitting our last handful of minutes here. So in our last handful of minutes, like what are things that like, cause we can sit and talk about the negative forever, right? We
Yeah.
can sit and be like, comparison sucks. Social media is hard. Life is difficult. Everybody else is, whatever. But I would love to hear like, again, full disclaimer, neither of us are perfect at it. We know we are not at like the level that we'd love to be. Comparison is probably always going to be there.
Yeah.
Even if in a year we're both billionaires and just all our dreams come true, we're still going to be like, yeah, but what did that billionaire do? And what did that other person do? And is money really making me you know what I mean?
Totally.
There's going to be all these new layers of things. So knowing that we're not perfect at handling it and there's always going to be growth to be made, what are things over the years, whether it's you dipping your toes more into the entrepreneur world and starting a brand, starting a company, or just as yourself as a human being outside of business, what are things you've tried to do or implement to kind of negate that comparison a little bit more or let it have less of an impact on your day-to-day life?
Before I go into my number one thing of meditation, I will say having a gratitude practice, I think that helps a lot. I've kind of shied away from it recently just because I was using like the 5-minute journal, which is, if you don't know what it is, it's like a notebook that you list out what you're grateful for. It starts with like an inspirational quotes for every day, and you have like a nighttime or a morning and nighttime routine basically. So you say like what maybe you're looking forward to the day, 3 things that you're grateful for, and then at night it's what amazing things happened today and like what's one thing that maybe could have gone better. And which I actually like really love that recap, but just having like the awareness of what are 3 things in your life every single day that you're grateful for. And I would argue to try and switch them up from day to day, not have them be the same thing. But I think that helps a lot because I think when we compare ourselves, speaking, I guess, mostly for myself, but when we compare ourselves to others, we're looking at things that we want, not necessarily that we need. And so I think coming back to that gratitude practice and meditation helps you just really get outside of your head and more like in your body and just be like, I'm okay. Like, this is fine. I don't need to compare myself.
Yeah. Do you ever like kind of put your own filters on your social media of like,
Definitely.
you know what? I'm going to use this mute button or I'm going to use this unfollow button to what it was designed for. And I'm just going to take this out of my feed because if it's negatively impacting me,
oh, absolutely.
why would I have it? And I think like sometimes when people hear that, they're like, oh, well, yeah, I don't follow like news pages that I don't want to see, or I don't follow like evil pages that show me bad stuff or something. That's not even necessarily what I'm talking about. That's obviously like, that's not great. What I'm talking about is like, if there is something, because I have done this, living in the creative world, there's a lot of other creatives that have done things and I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. And it's not even necessarily that I have anything against them at all. But after a while, when I've identified, every time I see this entity share something or post, it doesn't inspire me. It actually makes me feel bad because I'm instantly comparing myself. It's weird because it feels like you are disconnecting from them. But realistically, it's a disconnection from the feeling that it is giving you. Because if that feeling is not a one that is positive or just somewhere in the middle, a neutral one, if it's negative, why would you leave it there?
Absolutely.
Like, why not just take it out of your feed, even if there's nothing you actually have against it other than whatever's going on in my brain is making me feel this bad emotion whenever I see or ingest this type of content. And I should probably get rid of that for a while.
Totally.
And like I've done kind of like almost a revisit in ways where like during certain points in time where I'm like, okay, this is affecting me in a negative way due to comparison, taking this out of my feed. And then at a later date, months or a year, whatever later, I will actually go back and be like, you know what? I want to see this thing again.
Yeah,
I want to see this person again. I'm going to refollow. And usually if you've kind of done the work to kind of like filter that out and filter new good things in and whatever, you might have a different or more positive viewpoint on the thing that was hurting you to begin with.
Absolutely.
And I've went back and I've followed pages again and been like, now it's inspiring again. Like, you know what I mean? Like I did a little bit of that work to trade out that comparison. So 15 minutes is up already. Another one. So if there were, and even if you've already listed it, we can share them again. But like, if somebody's listening to this right now and they were like, you know what, I just cannot stop comparing myself. What are outside of like, oh, we can unfollow people on social media and stuff like that. Even outside of the social media realm, what are the main things that you would say of like, you know what, like comparison maybe even starts with just getting your mind right in the first place. So what are those steps that you would share with somebody of like, if you want to start to get going with this and maybe it can help you out with the comparison game, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to start meditating. I would tell them to implement a gratitude practice. I mean, definitely like both of those things. Maybe even like affirmations. I think that's actually included in the 5-minute journal as well, which could change every day along with your gratitude. And honestly, what I was thinking when you were saying about like muting or unfollowing, I'm a huge proponent for just taking breaks from social media.
Yeah.
Just like shut it down for the weekend. Sometimes I find myself in just like mindless scrolls like day after day. And like, I know that's like when I'm at my limit. I need to put the phone down. I just need to like step away from the whole thing. And if you're having like FOMO about missing out on social media, that's probably also a sign that you just need to take a step back, meditate, journal, just get out whatever is in your head. I think that's a good first step.
I love it. So I'm going to leave us with one last thing as we officially wrap up, because I started this with a cheesy quote. I'm going to end it with a cheesy quote because it's another thing that I have kind of ingrained in my brain to remind myself of, when I'm doing things like comparing or belittling myself in comparison to somebody else, whatever it may be. And I heard this on another show. I cannot remember who exactly said it, but it's not mine. I'm not this smart. But what they said was, recognize that whatever you think you don't have, recognize that you have something else in its place. And I think that feeds very well into a lot of like the gratitude practices and the affirmations and all that sort of stuff that you were saying. And it's like, I feel like when you can remind yourself of even something as silly as that might sound, notice those things. Notice the thing of like, okay, I'm comparing and I want this thing so bad. You're only looking at what you don't have and thinking maybe even that you want it more than you actually do. Just like you said earlier, there's a want and there's a need. Which one is it really? And the comparison is going to make you just be like, oh no, I have to have that. But when you can practice some of that gratitude, stop looking so much at maybe what you don't have and start looking at what you do. So that's my reminder that is like, again, been ingrained in my brain that I have tried to keep myself on top of whenever I'm feeling those feelings, is that whatever you don't have, recognize that there's something else that you do have that's in its place. So that wasn't a bad 15-minute Friday on comparison. I think we did pretty good.
I think we did pretty well.
I think we got some of it out. I would say if I was listening to this, I would have been like, whoa, That was a pretty good episode. I think I'm going to compare myself less. Just kidding. I would probably scroll to the next thing and be like, oh, I'm comparing myself again. Gabby, this was a blast, as always. I thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
If anybody wants to come talk to you about any of the stuff that we shared in this episode, where can they find you around social media while they're not taking a break from it, while they're trying to decompress on the comparison?
You can find me on Instagram at ggwellness or email me at info@ggbwell.com.